Hey everyone, this is Alison from Thriving While Disabled, and I want to talk to you guys today about voting. So, the elections the closing of the elections is just over a month away, and people are already voting. Voting by mail has been a big option this year, and I want to talk to you guys about why it's so important for everybody to participate this year and what the challenges tend to be for our community and what our representation tends to look like, in hopes that you guys will also be able to make sure that you're registered and vote. So as far as registering to vote, if you're over 18, you should be able to vote. There are some exceptions, which are basically things like people who are currently imprisoned, and some states, former prisoners are not allowed to vote, other states they are. There's maybe one or two other things, but that's the primary thing. Basically, if you're citizenship. If you are a U.S. citizen, you should be able to vote. Period. All right. So, everybody in the U.S., I'm talking to you. I apologize to any foreign viewers I might have, but this time I'm very focused on the Americans. We need to vote. The disabled community itself, from 2014 to 2018, they had what they call a voter surge, which means there was a great increase in numbers. That increase was from 40% of the disabled population voting to 49%. So even with that surge that happened in 2018, there still is less than 50% voter turnout among people with disabilities. When they look at the numbers and compare abled people to disabled people, what they find is the disabled people who are working vote at about the same rate as abled people. The difference is in the disabled people who are not employed. That's the group that has the lowest rate of turnout. And it's really important that representation happens. This year, we're facing a election with no great candidates, but with one candidate whose decisions have caused a lot of damage in this country, who's up against another candidate who isn't making decisions that are super damaging to our country. For me, who leans left, I think there's a lot more he could do. But he has empathy and respect and these other attributes that I have not been able to find in our current president. If you disagree with me, and that's fine, and I'd like you to vote too, because I'm big on equality and fairness. But I personally am very concerned about this year's election. The disabled community as a whole, like I said, 49% of the disabled community votes. And in 2016, a third of the disabled people who did vote reported issues and challenges when they went to vote. What do I mean by issues and challenges? Most often it's about accessibility and transportation. So the first part is a lot of people with disabilities have a hard time getting places. We know this. We've all dealt with this at some point or other. Either the vehicle can't fit the wheelchair, or traveling is too expensive, or the bus doesn't go there, or you can't get on the bus, or things like that. There's all these different issues related to accessibility. This is especially true for poor disabled people, which there's a lot of us. And so being able to, one, physically get there, and two, being able to afford to get there are major problems for our community. The other big issue is once we get to the voting place, there's a lot of people who are either kept out because the space isn't as accessible as it should be, and their specific disability can't get through, or because of some form of gatekeeping on the part of the poll workers, or because the machines that are accessible aren't functional, aren't available, aren't being used properly, things like that. These are the big issues. This year is a bit different. Because of COVID-19, a lot of states are doing some form of mail-in ballots, which can be extremely helpful for us. But there's also people who cannot fill out a paper ballot. For example, the blind population, there aren't generally braille ballots, and so if they can't fill out the paper ballot, then they have to find another way. Good morning. They have to find another way to vote, which is usually asking somebody else to fill out the ballot for them, or voting in person with assistance. So what I've done is I wrote a post specifically about our rights to vote and the history of the laws, and there's a lot of laws designed to make sure disabled people can vote. Unfortunately, none of them have gone far enough yet, because there's still a lot of reported issues, and that's a sad commentary on the state of our nation. But there's also because we have the paper ballots this year, I strongly recommend that if you can, you get the paper ballot so you can fill it out in advance. Have it mailed to you. Now, turning it in, mailing is a completely acceptable option, and the sooner you mail it out, the more likely it is to get in on time. A lot of states, including New Jersey, also have designated places to pick up, to deliver your ballots to, or to have them be picked up. In New Jersey, I know we have multiple designated drop-off points in every county, as well as being able to drop off our ballots at the election council in our county seat. These are things to look into. I've written an entire post focused on our rights, the laws, and how to handle it. And in there, I have links to, one, check your registration, two, register if you need to, and three, to see what each state's rules are for this year, so that you can see what you can and can't do and what will or won't work for you. Since 1962, we've had the right to have somebody help us fill out our ballots, and generally they then have to sign that they helped us. But that is a potentially useful option if you can't physically do your ballot on your own, or you can't read it, things like that. The other part is, once you've filled out your ballot, you do have the right to designate somebody as your ballot bearer, at least in New Jersey, and I suspect in most states, where that person signs off on the responsibility of delivering your ballot. That could be to your polling place on election day, that could be to the Board of Elections, that could be to another designated location. But you can protect yourself in that way too. The biggest thing is make sure that you file correctly whatever your state's rules are. Generally speaking, if you've got a paper ballot, it will need to be put in 2 envelopes. One being a privacy envelope and the other being the envelope for actually turning it in. That's to protect you. And some states are throwing out ballots that aren't in that double wrapped space. They call them a naked ballot. So, for you to make sure, 1, make sure you vote. 2, make sure your vote is counted. So make sure that your signature matches what they're looking for. Make sure that you have your ballot properly wrapped. Make sure that you sign whatever you need to and that you do it exactly the way they want it to be done. It's the only way to help make sure that your vote is counted. I believe every vote is important. Every vote should be counted. And I want to make sure that our community, the disabled community, is heard and that we get out the vote. All right? So I hope you're doing well, and happy voting. Talk to you soon. Until next time, keep thriving.